Russia, it's not like any other country on the planet, and there are some tips that are going to be useful for you if you're going to visit for the first time. And that's where I come into play with 5 things that you should be aware of before going to Russia. Well, first of all, the number one thing that you should know before even thinking of booking your flight to Russia is that you might need a visa, and you're going to need one for any amount of time that you're going to spend in the territory of the Russian Federation, unless you're a citizen of these countries. And that is quite important to point out, because even citizens of the EU and the US need a visa, and that is something that we are not usually used to. And the process of applying for a visa is not that easy too, as you need quite a few supporting documents, such as an invitation letter and a medical insurance which is approved by Russia, and then your passport has to be physically in the hands of the Russian consulate for a few days. However, the good news is that Russia is slowly opening up to more and more countries without the visa requirement, and the way they're doing so is by setting up special geographic areas where it is possible to go with just an electronic visa, and the process of applying for such visa is quite similar to the ESTA for the US. For example, it is possible to visit the regions of Kaliningrad, Vladivostok and Saint Petersburg with this type of visa for a period of up to 8 days, but the drawback is that you cannot cross into any other region of Russia unless you want to face really harsh penalties. For example, you can't go to Saint Petersburg with the e-visa and then go to Moscow on the same trip. But Russia is going to open up more and more in the future. The second thing that you should know before going to Russia is connected to the English language. You probably know this already, but the level of English amongst Russians is quite mediocre, to say the least. That means that you're supposed to either learn the basics in Russian or just expect to not be able to engage with locals as much as you would in other places. And also, Russian is quite a difficult language, so even if you want to try out your Russian skills, always make sure to double check that the conversation is heading into the direction that you want it to. The reason why I'm saying that is because a couple of years ago I was in Moscow and my Russian knowledge was even more limited than what it is now, and this is what happened when I attempted to get a haircut. And no, that wasn't what I asked for, and that was in Moscow, where the level of English is a bit higher as compared to the rest of Russia, along with maybe Saint Petersburg. It's quite normal in most countries for English to be more prevalent in larger cities and touristic centers. If you're planning on going on a trip along the Golden Ring in the cities just outside of Moscow, I'd say a tour guide speaking English is quite mandatory, otherwise you wouldn't be able to enjoy the trip at all. My advice is that you should learn to at least decipher the Cyrillic alphabet, as that will be really useful in getting by in the metro system and also in understanding what kind of services are being offered as you walk along the street. And since we're on the topic, we have to say that number 3, there is much more to see in Russia other than just Moscow or St. Petersburg. And also, on that note, Russia is not to be visited just for winter tourism when it's snowing and the cities are all white and stuff. Or at least they were before global warming. Russia is just so huge that of course it has destinations for all year round. Have you ever thought that you could go to Russia in the summer and enjoy the sunshine? You can. Most Russians and foreigners spend their summer holidays on the shore of the Black Sea, where there are many locations with beautiful beaches and transparent waters to bathe in. The most popular one is Sochi, where the 2014 Winter Olympics were held. And the thing is, they were held there because Sochi functioned as a base for athletes competing in the Caucasus. Indeed, Russia is a popular destination in the winter as well, as the Caucasus have the highest peaks in the whole of Europe, with Mount Elbrus being the highest of them all. Don't tell that to the French or the Italians though, because they do not consider the Caucasus to be part of Europe, just so they can say that the highest peak of Europe is Mount Blanc, right on the border between France and Italy. Now, number 4 is my personal favorite because you can go to Russia for cheap. Now, Russia is not in the EU, and historically Ryanair and EasyJet have never managed to increase their routes to include the destinations in Russia. A couple of times they came close to officially announce flights to Saint Petersburg, but Aeroflot and the Russian aviation system have never been too inclined in allowing European low-cost airliners to serve destinations in Russia. However, since last year things must have changed apparently when Wizz Air started announcing flights from Budapest to Moscow and Saint Petersburg. Over the span of 1 year, they expanded until they started flying from London to Russia as well, and even before the whole pandemic thing, they were supposed to start flights from Bulgaria, Slovakia and Romania, while also start serving flights to Kazan in Tatarstan as well. So if an usual return ticket with a legacy airline from Europe to Russia usually comes at around 250 euros, last time I managed to fly Wizz Air return from London to St. Petersburg for like 60. They can be that cheap, no joke, and that's an absolute game changer when it comes to international tourism into Russia. Also, another airline to check out is Pobeda, which is basically the airline that was set up and is now owned by Aeroflot. They were the first to offer fares both within Russia and from Moscow and St. Petersburg to international destinations that were at least comparable to the crazy cheap prices of Ryanair and EasyJet all over Europe. Now they still offer quite a large amount of flights from Moscow, but the prices have gone up a little bit, and I would position them between the prices of Wizz Air and the ones of any other legacy airline. Now, with point number 5, I found myself having to destroy a legendary castle, which has always been put on a pedestal and has always been regarded with undeserved fame and popularity, that is the Trans Siberian train route. When I say that the Trans Siberian is not as cool as it sounds, I mean it due to the way that it is usually perceived. To the people that don't know, when people say that they want to travel on the Trans Siberian, they mean that they want to travel by train without stopping from Moscow to Vladivostok across the entire territory of Russia and Siberia, and that usually takes 7 days. And indeed, there is a train going directly from Moscow to St. Petersburg, only stopping at selected cities along the route. But when I say that the Trans-Siberian is overrated, I say it thinking of all the people who embark on such a journey by getting on the train in Moscow and only getting off once there in Vladivostok 7 days later. After all, there's a restaurant car and showers and everything. But the thing is, looking out the window for 7 straight days is something that is definitely not advisable, especially in Russia, because Siberia is nothing but a series of trees, and then again trees. So what you want to do instead is consider the Trans-Siberian route as some sort of adventurous path that you want to take and visit all the main cities in Russia that are reachable by train until you get to Vladivostok. For example, you can leave from Moscow and get to Vladivostok while stopping in Kazan, Yekaterinburg, Krasnoyarsk and Irkutsk, and the whole thing would take up to 2 or 3 weeks while stopping a night or two in each city. And in this way, you will still be able to try out the experience of staying continuously for a good amount of hours on a single train, while at the same time not be completely exhausted by the time you get to the Pacific Ocean. If you watched this video until the end, that means you're planning on traveling to Russia. If that is the case, make sure you drop me one of these and I'll see you in the next one.